All right, check this out. You guys are going to love this story because it's a massive win for freedom in America. A group of drag queens just won a massive landmark lawsuit against Texas A&M after the university tried to ban their drag shows entirely. They tried to stop the drag shows, which is not only unfair and cruel, but it's illegal. It's unconstitutional. You can express yourself however you want in America as long as you're not harming anybody else, which they weren't. But this lawsuit, this decision is important for a few reasons. First of all, it comes at a time when we've seen everything from gender-affirming care being banned. We've seen the criminalization of drag in certain red states. We've seen book bans targeting LGBTQ plus authors. The strategy is always the same. It's to use the law or small little loopholes or right-wing judges to erase LGBTQ plus people from public life. But this ruling basically flips the script entirely. It says, no, the government actually doesn't have the power to ban people from expressing themselves just because it offends right-wing politicians or right-wing people on Twitter. And here's another reason why this is really important. This is one of the main reasons, in my opinion, why it's important. This ruling came from a Bush-appointed judge, well, a George H.W. Bush appointee. So it's not a left-wing activist judge or whatever Trump's been calling them lately. Trump has no ground to stand on if he wants to go down that path when he inevitably begins attacking the judge. But let me break down the implications of this and what exactly the right-wing judge says, because it's another case of an older white dude being kind of based, being kind of pro-freedom, which is what Republicans are supposed to be. Okay, really quickly. Just in, a federal judge in Texas, a George H.W. Bush appointee, has barred Texas A&M's board from canceling a drag show on campus. Before we break down the ruling, let's go back to the initial article from about a month ago. On February 28th, it says Texas A&M system bans drag shows from its universities. The move sparked a new First Amendment fight between students and university administrators. Spoiler alert, the First Amendment won in this case. And we've seen some interesting court rulings regarding activists or pro-Palestine activists being arrested and deporting that make you wonder if the First Amendment is still intact, but it seems to be, according to this judge. The Texas A&M University System Board of Regents on Friday passed a resolution banning all drag performances from taking place on its 11 university campuses, which is absolutely wild, and it's downstream from a Trump executive order. That means Draggyland, a beloved annual event scheduled for March 27th at the Rudder Theater at the College Station campus, will have to find a new venue. The move sparks a new First Amendment fight between students and university administrators. The Queer Empowerment Council, a student group, filed a lawsuit to block the ban. Spoiler alert, they won. We'll break it down in just one second. The resolution says having on-campus drag shows may be seen as promoting gender ideology that both President Donald J. Trump and Governor Greg Abbott have said federal and state funds may not be used for that purpose. It directs the system's chancellor and the president of each institution to implement the policy, including canceling any upcoming drag shows. And this drag show was a massive cultural staple for Texas A&M universities. It's still going to happen in a few days. I hope it's bigger than ever. But before I get into some of the interesting stuff the judge said, I just want to say, I mean, a lot of people will miss the broader First Amendment battle that's happening here. Of course, there is a First Amendment battle between the university and between Draggyland, and we want Draggyland to prevail, but there's also a First Amendment battle between the university and the Trump admin. So when the chancellor was asked about this, they directly cited the Trump admin cutting off funds for other universities that have done similar things, and that's called the chilling effect. That is Trump basically putting his thumb on the scale with other universities and cutting off funds so that universities across the country begin to preemptively slash these shows. I talk about the chilling effect all the time when it comes to the media. For example, when Trump sued ABC, and ABC basically capitulated, it created this chilling effect where now Trump can sue station after station after station. They will continue to capitulate, and then other news stations begin to preemptively bend the knee. It's a scary phenomenon that happens in authoritarian regimes where you don't even have to target every single news station. You don't even have to target every single university. You just target one, and then there are downstream effects. But check this out. Here is what the judge said, and keep in mind, she was appointed by George H.W. Bush. So it says more from Rosenthal. While Texas A&M's board claims, in what the judge calls a, quote, unpersuasive argument, that performers dressed as the opposite sex is unprotected speech, Dragiland's, quote, culturally significant message about LGBTQ plus rights is protected as speech by the First Amendment. It's kind of a heartwarming ruling at a time when trans rights, LGBTQ plus rights are under attack. So the ruling says, the court disagrees regarding Texas A&M's ruling. It is long and well established that theatrical performances are protected forms of expressive conduct, not held to a, quote, drastically different standard than other forms of free speech under the First Amendment solely because theater, quote, frequently mixes speech with live action or conduct. So again, theater is still a protected form of expressive conduct. The fact that this was even up for dispute in Texas is wild, but the parties do not cite authority requiring the court to deconstruct the elements of a live drama, theatrical performance, or work of art to separate out components that are, quote, expressive or non-expressive. The performance must be considered as a whole like any other work. Both the performance and conversations that comprise Dragiland are intended to convey a culturally significant message about LGBTQ plus rights. The court finds that Dragiland is protected as speech and expressive conduct. And again, the judge did say that she finds the argument from the university entirely unpersuasive, an unpersuasive argument, because they're trying to say that if you're switching your genders, then that is unprotected speech, because why? They don't actually explain why. And then the conclusion says, this part's great, the conclusion says, the court grants the motion for a preliminary injunction. The board is enjoined from enforcing the ban. The Dragiland performance scheduled for March 27, 2025 in the Rudder Theater may proceed as originally planned. Hell yes. That is absolutely amazing. And there are a few main key takeaways. So the fact that we even have to ask this question in 2025 is wild, but yes, drag shows are protected speech. The judge ruled that drag performances are a form of expressive conduct protected by the First Amendment, as theatrical performances always have been, right? Plays, theater, music, all of these forms of artistic expression that the government just can't ban because they dislike the message are protected. And also, banning drag shows is a viewpoint discrimination. This is huge because what the court found is that Texas A&M's ban wasn't just a general policy about certain sort of theatrical things. It specifically targeted drag performances for the perceived social and political message. So again, it targeted specific viewpoints. You can't just discriminate specific viewpoints because that makes it an unconstitutional viewpoint discrimination, which is a term that the First Amendment does not allow whatsoever. Also, Trump's executive orders cannot override the Constitution, which is the main key headline here. The Texas A&M's board tried to cite Trump's executive order, which banned federal funding for any gender ideology, whatever that means. And he said that gives them the right to shut down drag shows, but the judge rejected that and said, dude, no executive order can override the First Amendment. That's not how it works whatsoever. So if anyone else feels like the court system has been slow and things have been grim over the past few months, then this is a little bit of a light in the sky. You know, Dragiland is back on. The university is barred from enforcing its drag ban, and that's why this matters so much. I mean, to be honest, this group of drag performers had more guts and balls than most Dems have had over the past few months. I mean, we've taken, some weak lawsuits to the courts, and we give some speeches here and then, other than AOC and Bernie are killing it. But most Dems are kind of just dragging their feet, yet these drag queens are absolutely shredding the Trump admin's executive orders. I'll leave it at that. I love all of you. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.